The Golden State Warriors for a very long time now have been one of the league's most dominant teams in recent memory. They became a legitimate dynasty for a while. They were like annoyingly good for a while. I mean, the whole Kevin Durant saga, they were insanely good. Anyone that's watched the NBA for the past basically decade knows how good the Warriors are and used to be when they were in their prime. But recently they've kind of fallen on kind of rough times. They didn't even make the playoffs last year. They just didn't look like themselves. And officially the era of the big three of Curry, Klay, and Draymond is over as they went and traded Klay Thompson. So there's been a lot of question marks around the Warriors, but in my opinion, I don't think a lot of people are really shining enough light on how good of an offseason they actually had and how good I think this Golden State Warriors team could end up being going into next season. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think they're going to be a championship level team by any means, but I definitely still think they could be a playoff level team and be a very talented team this entire season for a few different reasons. I'm going to get into all the biggest highlights of additions and everything they made, why I think this team could work, and just overall why I'm pretty high on the Warriors going into this season. So if that does sound interesting to you, please watch it all the way through. Hit the like button, subscribe button, that's a word to me. And without further ado, without running on too much, just get right into this video. So the first thing that I really want to get into is going to be the fact that they had an extremely underrated offseason this year, as no one, and I mean it is like a desert, nobody is talking about the Warriors offseason this year, despite, in my opinion, them having a pretty good one. And the only thing they really talked about was the Klay Thompson trade, and it's because, I mean, it was Klay Thompson getting traded, but nobody really highlighted how good of a return the Warriors really got. As in return for Klay Thompson, they were able to get Kyle Anderson and Buddy Hield. Now, if they were trading prime Klay Thompson, this would be a horrible trade, obviously, but for a team that had to do a sign and trade, so they lost a lot of leverage there, and Klay Thompson came off of his worst year of his career in a while, and they were still able to get a very good shooting guard in Buddy Hield and an excellent role player in Kyle Anderson for him, is extremely beneficial, and in my opinion, it's probably going to fit them better than what a aging Klay Thompson was going to on a giant contract. So I think they were able to get a very good return for a guy like Klay Thompson. And then on top of that, they drafted a guy like Quentin Post. Now, Quentin Post, outside of any draft nerds, nobody knows who this guy is, but he is an absolute bucket at the center position, and I think he's going to be a lot like Trace Jackson Davis. Now, not in play style, but in the fact that he's a late round big that the Warriors drafted, that is going to make a pretty big impact on them. And I think Quentin Post is one of the most slept on prospects in this draft. He has like Jonas Valanciunas potential, which doesn't sound great, but coming from one of the last picks in the draft is an amazing pick. And I just think overall Quentin Post is a guy who is going to give them quality minutes. He can shoot the ball, he can spread the floor, he's going to fit in their system, but he's also a great rebounder and he's 7 foot tall, so he can do everything you want a big man to do. He just lacks elite athleticism, so maybe his defense would get a little exposed, but as a rotational center, as a rookie, I think he is going to be a very serviceable big and might even take Kevon Looney's minutes by the time the end of the year comes around, and that is just a name a lot of people should look at. And then the last thing we're getting really talk about is the fact that they drafted Reese Beckham. Now, Reese Beckham might not even play for them. He may be a rotational guard, but I doubt it. So I'm not going to talk about him too much, but he also is a solid player. So maybe he becomes a rotational guy at the end of the rotation for them, but I wouldn't imagine he's going to be too important for them, but he does have the potential to maybe get a few minutes and crack the rotation at the back end. And that's the only reason I'm really going to mention him. But the main thing is the fact that they got Kyle Anderson, Buddy Hield, and drafted Quentin Post, all three of which I think are going to be very big additions for them and are going to impact winning heavily for the Warriors this season. And then the second thing I want to get into is the fact that this depth chart is just extremely solid, a large part due to how good their offseason was, in my opinion, because their depth chart right now, their starting lineup really isn't going to be changed that much. It's going to look a little something like this. Probably, this might not be the exact starters, probably won't be, but this is probably what is going to project that. Curry's obviously going to be a different point guard, and Curry is still Steph Curry. He's still one of the best players in the entire NBA. Brandon Podziemski, I think, does have all-star potential. I think he still has a little bit of ways to go, but he's definitely a solid, high-level, high-quality starter in the league. Andrew Wiggins, he did have a down year last year a good bit. If he can just get back to where he normally used to be, he should be better if the distractions aren't there, because he had a lot of off-the-court distractions with family issues and stuff last year. So if he can just be undistracted and play basketball like we know he can, he's at least a good, high-quality starter as well. Draymond Green's probably going to still be the power forward, and although he almost does nothing on offense at this point in his career, he's still very good in his role. He's still a very good defender. He's a pretty good leader. when he's not punching his teammates in the face. So overall, he's a pretty solid guy and solid starter. Can definitely be a starter on a championship team still, I think, as long as he's not needed on the offensive end. And then their starting center is either going to be Looney, Trace Jackson-Davis, or they could go small with Kuminga. I'm just going to put Trace Jackson-Davis here. He's a very underrated, solid big. I don't know if he's big enough to be a center in all the games, but I do think he's going to probably be there. I wouldn't be surprised if they run out a few different starting lineups, just kind of figuring out what they need to do. But overall, that's probably going to be a projected starting lineup with maybe a few tweaks here and there, with a bench that's going to look like Jonathan Kuminga, who kind of had a breakout year last year. His three-point shot's still not there, so I'm not fully convinced that he is going to be able to do what he did last year consistently, because usually guys without any three-point threat, or at least not much of a three-point threat, aren't going to be able to get to the paint very easily because they just let you shoot, play off of you, like give you the Josh Giddey treatment. But if Kuminga is able to repeat what he did in the second half of last season for an entire year, he's definitely going to be a stud and definitely going to start for them, and he's going to be a huge piece to what they do. Buddy Hield, I think, fits them perfectly. He's going to be a great three-point shooter. He's going to be a high-volume guy. He can win you games when he's on. Now, yes, he's nowhere near what Clay used to be in his prime, but Buddy Hield is going to be able to replace a lot of what Clay gave them last year, maybe not on the defensive end, but overall, Buddy Hield is just a great player to have on your team. Kyle Anderson's a role player that any team would love to have on their team. He's a great defender, overall very solid, not going to turn the ball over, not going to kill you. He's going to be able to really just plug and play no matter what system he's in, and just overall is a very solid player. Kevon Looney, amazing rebounder. We know what he is at this point. Quentin Post, I think, is going to be a pretty big X factor for them, giving them an offensive threat from the center position, and on top of that, he's very good with the ball in his hand. He's a very good passer for the center, kind of like a poor man's Nikola Jokic type deal going on there. So I think he could be a huge piece to their team once he gets really like solidified in the rotation, if he is going to. Gary Payton II, we know what he does. Great defender, pretty good athlete. That's pretty much all he does, but he's very good at his role. And then DeAnthony Melton's also probably going to be a rotational guy for them. And overall, you're going to be able to do a lot of things. It's a fairly versatile starting lineup and bench unit. There's going to be a lot of different lineups you can throw out there, and I think they're going to be pretty good at guarding basically everything while also having enough offensive firepower with any lineup they want to throw out there as well. And I just think overall this team is going to be pretty hard to deal with for an average NBA team, and I think they can beat anybody on a nightly basis. I do think they will struggle pretty convincingly on the defensive end when it comes to their big man, because although I like Trace Jackson-Davis, he's not really big enough to guard their centers. Draymond Green's not big enough. Quentin Post is going to struggle to guard the perimeter, even though I like him. We know Kevon Looney isn't the best defender on the perimeter either, and they really have no bigs that can guard the perimeter, so they're going to have to either go small ball and hope that they can just outscore you and outspeed you, or they could definitely run into some problems there. But overall, I do think this lineup is pretty good, pretty well-rounded, pretty versatile, and they should be able to beat a lot of teams and get a good amount of wins, especially in the regular season this year. And really, the final reason why I'm just excited for this Warriors team, as not even a Warriors fan, I'm just excited to see them play, because I think that the Golden State Warriors are finally kind of transitioning away. Like, this is the start of a new era. Although they have the same, Steph Curry's still the leader, they still have Draymond Green, and they still have a few pieces from the old days on this roster, I think they're definitely transitioning into a different style of play, and that's not exactly a bad thing. Change is not always a bad thing, and I think them realizing, look, paying Clay with a max would have been a mistake, and they realized that, and that's why they didn't do it, and that's why they ended up trading with him. And I think they're going back to their old ways when they used to have strength as numbers, as they're saying. Now, yes, their depth probably isn't as great as it was back then, even when they were doing strength and numbers, but I think it's definitely getting to that point. Like, Buddy Hield is a legitimate great role player. Kyle Anderson is a great role player. Andrew Wiggins, outside of last year, is a great role player. Like, they have so many good, solid pieces on this roster to go along with a superstar like Steph Curry, with a potential star in Kuminga, and another potential star in Brandon Podziemski, with tons of young guys with pretty high ceilings that should be able to contribute pretty much right away. This team should be very, very solid. They have a great mix of vets and young guys. They have good ceilings. They have a lot of potential that's been untapped, and I think this new strength and numbers mindset and this kind of transition period could really benefit the Warriors and kind of extend this window. Now, do I think they can win a championship right now? No, but if they trade maybe a few of these role players for another star that fits their system, while also keeping a little bit of this depth as well with their young guys, and they continue to draft well, maybe we could see 1 or 2 more years of potential championship basketball a little bit further down the line from the Warriors, and maybe this era doesn't have to be over just yet. But unfortunately, guys, that's my first video. So comment below. Do you agree with me? Do you think that the Warriors are done? Do you think they're going to win a championship? How good do you think they're going to be basically next year? I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like point, hit the like button, and subscribe button. Mean up. So word to me, and I hope you have a blessed day, because I had a blessed day. So you need to have a blessed day. All glory to God. See you in the next video. Goodbye. Boo. Blah.